going on, people? My name's Timmy Joe, well, I used to make videos about computers on the internet. It's been a couple weeks. Maybe I'll make a video on why I haven't been making videos. Wouldn't that be ironic? Yeah, that'll be next video, though. I feel kind of bummed out about the tech market right now, and we'll get into that later. Right now, we have literal video cards to make videos on, so let's not be so silly. And we're going to answer an age-old question. GTX 680 versus 7970, graphics processing power, when there are no VRAM limitations, when they have the same amount of VRAM, which one is better? Which one has aged better? And if you bought one back then, which one could you still rely on to play some 1080p video games in this juncture? At this juncture. We're gonna answer all that and more after this intro and ad spot. Take it away. The Pure Base 500DX by Be Quiet is optimized for high cooling performance and is designed for those who seek low noise and high airflow all in one budget-friendly chassis. The high airflow mesh intake allows the three included Pure Wings 2 140mm fans to silently cool your PC components, while the ARGB light strips at the front and interior of the case give your build that look you've been looking for. More information on the Pure Base 500DX in the description, and thanks to Be Quiet for sponsoring this video. Alright, so it's like constant aluminum cutting across the street there. I know that only those of you with headphones can tell, but I'm just going to keep talking over it. And I got the mic nice and close, so hopefully you don't hear the construction zone. It's been hard to film this video today with all the interruptions. So, nice viewer of the channel, Josh Wicks, who when he emails me, I think it's my website provider, Wicks, emailing me, but no, it's just his last name. So thanks to Josh. He wanted to plug puglove.com, pughearts.com. He got his pug rescues from them, and he just wanted, you know, if he sent in the card, he gets to plug something. Links in the description. I got some pugs. I know that they need some love, so that's a pug rescue. Go check it out. He has an R9 380 4GB model that he wanted to share with me, wanted to give to me. And I thought that was an awesome deal, even though I thought he said 380X. Went back and looked at the emails, and he definitely didn't. But I thought, hey, 4 gigs in that last year when they revamped, when they did a refresh of a refresh like AMD always does. 7970 gigahertz edition, 280, 4 variants of the same card essentially. They added an extra gig of VRAM in that last year. And they did some architectural improvements going from GCN 1 to 3, but essentially it's a 7950 right here with 4 gigs of VRAM. So that leaves me to think, well, we can do some comparisons here of 7970 versus GTX 680 4GB model, because you can only get them 2 and 4, and the 4s are rare. They're hard to find. So now we can pin them together here and really get some results, and we get the benefit of having all these newer APIs, lower level APIs, and it being 8 years later, we get to find out if you bought one of these back then, which one would have been better to hold on to. You know, maybe you bought one back then, and then a couple years later you upgraded, you handed this off to someone, you want to be able to know that the performance is still going to be half decent, right? So we get to finally answer some questions here. So let's get into it. I think I've got some web pages and stuff loaded up to talk to you about. So I saw this tweet. The GTX 680 takes the single performance GPU crown for 2012. It was this like throwback tweet from NVIDIA back in August. And I thought, it's not really fair, because I think the general consensus is that the 7970 was faster. It had more VRAM. It was roughly the same price. And once they released the gigahertz edition, it was faster than the GTX 680. Was it not? Pretty sure it was. But I wanted to answer this myself, so that's why we got the cards on the table, and NVIDIA can post whatever tweets they want there, whether they're truthful or not. But I've got a nice variant here, a Galaxy version, which I got in BC, the only 4GB 680 I could find on eBay in Canada. And here's the specs for it, GK104. It's got 1,536 cores, 128 TMUs, 32 ROPs, 4 gigs of memory, and importantly, the bandwidth is a 6 gigabits effective here, okay? And now when we move on to the 380, it is actually a cut down 7970 core technically, but I'll get into it in all in a second. It has pretty close specs, a little bit more stream processors, but those don't really go one-to-one. It's got the same kind of ROPS, same 4 gigs of memory, and it's got a near 6 gigabits a second memory bandwidth. So pretty close stuff. Now, if you want to compare this guy to a real 7970, which we will, we can see that the R9 380 is a cut down, much like, you know, RX 580 versus 570. Pretty close, but the 570 isn't quite as fast until you overclock it. Then it gets pretty close to the, you know, RX 580's performance, but you can still overclock that one a little bit further. You know, there, I made my point. But pretty close to the same, you know, stuff going on here. But because this is GCN 3.0, there were some improvements made that actually made the 7970 core, the Tahiti core, faster once it hit this Antigua core thing here. But I just want to kind of bring up the comparisons here to show that this is pretty much as fast as it sits as a 7970, even though it's kind of more closer to a 7950 core, or, you know, it's a non-X version or whatever, because the little bit of update to GCN's performance is negated by the fact that it is the cut down version. So I think that makes this absolutely fair. So why are we comparing a 3 years newer video card to this guy from 2012? Well, the 4 gigs of VRAM, of course. They have the same VRAM. That way we can really stretch these guys' legs and see what's up in the performance department. So I did recently review a 7970, and I had some benchmarks, and like this is from April of 2020. 8-year-old GPU still plays every AAA game in 2020. That's how good the 7970 is. I don't have that card anymore. It was my buddy Tyler's, so I'd have to like drive 2 hours or an hour and a half to go get it, so we're not going to worry about that. But when I went back to the benchmarks, which were here, I ran a few of these games at the settings that I was running back then, because I was running like low and medium settings to try and get 60 frames a second, right? So I ran a comparison, and this guy's within a couple percent. So this 380 is very comparable to the original core that's on the 7970. That's what I'm trying to get my point across. I did a lot of benchmarks here, and the results aren't anywhere near surprising. We'll queue up the benchmarks, and then we'll talk about them. Here. 12 games, some of them old, half of them new. Take it away. Well, those benchmarks speak for themselves, don't they? 7970 is the winner. GCN is just a better architecture than Kepler. And that's because it was scalable, and I mean, they used it up until Vega. I mean, they used it up until like last year. They only recently changed to RDNA, where Kepler here was only a 2-generation thing. 680s, 780s, 600 series, 700 series. And it's known to not have aged very well, and its drivers, not the greatest. Lower level API support, very apparent that it doesn't do well with the Vulcans and the DirectX 12s. In fact, all of those games when DirectX 11 was available, I used DirectX 11 because it gave this guy a little bit more of an advantage, when it came down to it. So let's talk these results. Crysis actually was a win for the 680, one of the only. And that's an older game, and that would have been a very fair point of comparison back in the day when Crysis 3 launched. Could the 680 run it or the 7970? Well, the 680 was running it better all day long back then, and even now with updated drivers and stuff and a little bit better of a, newer of a card from AMD, they still lost in the Crysis department. But that's pretty much an outlier here. We see Deus Ex Mankind Divided, 10 frames a second. 5 frames on The Witcher, 15 frames in Battlefield 5? I bet that was at DirectX 12. I don't remember. Probably by default it was listed. But anyways, I never checked it, but I bet that's what was going on there. Far Cry got 8. Fortnite, that's DirectX 11, and it is Unreal Engine, and the 680 comes out with a victory. Interesting, eh? At epic settings by 3 frames a second. And then Shadow of the Tomb Raider on high, 10 frames a second towards the 7970 or the 380. Call of Duty, 20 frames a second. Oh my goodness. Red Dead Redemption, you could play it on medium with this 380 card. You could definitely not do so with the 680. It was a slideshow. Doom Eternal, oh my goodness, it had like double the performance. And there's Vulcan making a play. One of the only Vulcans on the list here. Really shows GCN. Low-level APIs, you double the performance with the same VRAM. Isn't that crazy? And Control, 10 frames a second. Mafia, that's a new game that just came out, but it's DirectX 11, and it's not really the most, demanding of game. And they get pretty much the same results. So when it comes down to it, as far as things going lower-level API and the way things went and how GCN really is a fine wine technology, you cannot say the 680 is the better card. Maybe at launch, it was the better card. I wasn't reviewing back then. I bet the drivers were better for this. I bet everything was better for this compared to the 7970 at launch. But as far as the last time AMD really actually won the single GPU performance crown, I gotta say it's definitely in 2012 with the 7970 gigahertz edition versus the GTX 680. And I think that my results here today, although convoluted, pretty much point to that being true. There are insane leads that this card takes with very similar specs over this one, simply due to its architecture. I mean, these guys were built on the same 28 nanometer process, or this node size. They came out in the same, technology came out in the same year. But 8 years later, this thing is still a card I would recommend on a budget when, unless you had the 4 gigabyte model, I would never go with the 680. The 680 is just gone, and it doesn't perform well in any lower API stuff, which is where things have gone now that we're here in 2020. 7970, the ultimate winner of 2012. IMHO. I'll see you guys later. All day. All day.